Okay, guys, we're going to work with linear equations today. And basically, what that is we're going to be writing equations from tables. So last week, we worked with constant and proportionality and constant rate of change, which you guys have determined that all that is are fancy names for calling something unit rate. So you've been doing this all year long. You just didn't realize that you were doing it all year long. We introduced the equation y equals mx plus b. We talked about that m represents several different things. M is the change in y over the change in x. So when you're looking at a table, what is changing with y and what is changing with x, and just plugging in those numbers. It's also the constant rate of change. It's also the constant of proportionality. It's also unit rate. It's also rise over run. It's sink or swim. It's all kinds of different things. And so that you guys practiced with that this last week. So now we're working with writing these equations. I don't know why that purple didn't show up, but the letter B is your y-intercept. So if you were in class or if you were joined us on Zoom, you would know that the origin, which is 0, 0, does not belong to the x-axis and does not belong to the y-axis. It's kind of like its own neutral zone. So if a line crosses through 0, 0, and if I were to fold that line in half, I would have an equal part on both sides on the sheet of paper if I folded it in half. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't belong to the x or the y. It is its own thing. So if it crosses through 0, 0, it is a proportional line, which means that if it crosses through 0 and it's proportional, it's a constant of proportionality. If it crosses anywhere else, so let's say, for instance, it crosses at 0, 3, that's not 0, 0, that's not the origin. That would be a constant rate of change. And this letter, or this number, the 3, would be your y-intercept, which is the letter B. Now, it's kind of confusing, but we're going to go through it real quick here. Okay. Y. Okay. So things that we're looking for here that will help you out is we've got our formula, our equation here, y equals mx plus b. All that is a fancy way of creating a line. And you've worked with these types of equations before. So the first thing you need to do is find your change in y over your change in x. And what that means, all that means, and every time you write this, I would write the change in y over the change in x just to help you remember. It just means what's happening between the x's and what's happening between the y's. Because all this is here is our coordinates. This is -2, 8. This is -1, 3. This is 0, 2, and 1, 7. So if I wanted to, I could go and I could plot these points on a graph, which you already know how to do. These are my x's, these are my y's. All I'm wanting you to find out now is what is happening between what is my change in y? Change means what is the difference? So between this -8 and -3, I am adding 5. I am adding 5 from -3 to 2, and I'm adding 5. So that's my constant rate of change. So that number goes on top. That's my change in y. Now my change in x, what is happening with the x's? It is increasing by 1 each time. So my constant rate of change is 5 over 1. And we simplify that to 5. I told you in the previous slide that m is your change in y over your change in x. Well, that's what we just found right here. So that means that m is 5. Now, this is a little trick to help you remember about y-intercept. If the y-axis intercepts a line anywhere x is 0. So if x is 0, the digit you have in your y is your answer for B. So here I'm going to show you that. So you've got x equaling 0 right here. So this number is your y-intercept. So that being said, you now have, if I were to graph this, I would start at 0 and go up 2. That's where it would cross. And it would do something similar like that. Actually, it would do something similar like that. So my equation of my line is y equals 5x plus 2. This right here is my m. This right here is my y-intercept. This is your answer. Okay, I'm trying to erase this. Sorry, guys. Oh, I'm using the wrong thing. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's do the same exact thing. We're trying to find our change in y over our change in x. And when we do that, what is happening with our y's? It is, I'm on the same question again. Not sure why this isn't working. No clue. No clue whatsoever. I have no idea why this isn't working. Okay, let's go back to let's just start over from this equation here. All right, we've got our change in y over our change in x. Let's erase that. That's junk. So we're on the next one. Why is this not moving? Okay, sorry about that, guys. All right, change in y over the change in x. This is changing from 11 to 5. That is changing by 6. That is changing by 6. And that is changing by 6. It's actually subtracting by 6. So we're subtracting each time by 6. So that's a negative 6. And then what's happening with my x's? My x is increasing by 2, by 2, by 2. So it's increasing by 2. A negative divided by a positive is going to give you a negative. So my change in y over my change in x, I've got to simplify. When I divide these by 2, I get 3 over 1, which simplifies to 3. It's very important that you pay attention to that because the y is on top of the x and it doesn't come in alphabetical order. You flip them this time. So just like I said in the last question, this is your change in y and change in x is m. So change in y and change in x. And whenever I figured that out, I got 3 as my answer. So that's my m. When I look at this table, I see that when x equals 0, my y equals 5. So y equals 3x, and I got that from my change in y over change in x, plus 5. So whatever this is right there, your y is this number, always. All right. Let's go to the next one. We'll do this one a little bit quicker. We're going from 2 to 4. I'm adding 2, plus 2, plus 2. I am subtracting 1, and subtracting 1. So my change in y over my change in x, and some of you may not think it's important to put this, but I need you to do it each time. It will help you, especially since we're going to be getting into some more difficult things where you're going to have x over y or y over x and things like that. So make sure that every time you solve these, even though it's easy, that you write change in y and change over x each time. And it'll also help you keep your numbers in line. So the change in y is -1 and your change in x is +2. We can't simplify that, so that means that my m equals -1/2. Several people will turn that into 2 over 1. That's why you need to write that down. All right, and my x, I don't have a 0 up there for my x's. I do have a 0 for my y's, but that tells me that I'm going to go on the x-axis first and then stay on the x-axis. I need my x to equal 0. So if this pattern is adding 2 each time, what plus 2 is 2? We're adding by 2. So if I were to take 2 minus 2, I would get 0. So I've got to go backwards. Same here. 3 minus 1 is 2. So if I added 1, I'd get 4. So I've got a 0 and I've got a 4. My x is 0 and my y equals 4. Then that means this is my y-intercept, which means my equation is -1/2 x plus 4. All right, last one. You've got your slope of change in y over the change in x. We are just going from 3 to 6, so we're adding 3 each time. Down here, we're adding 2. So my change in y was 2, and my change in x is 3. I can't simplify that, so this is my m. I need to find out when x is 0, what is my y? Well, I don't have an x there for 0, so I need to go backwards. So from here to there, I'm increasing by 3, going the other direction, so I need to decrease by 3, and that would give me a 0. And this is increasing by 2, so that has to be a 5. 7 minus 2 is 5. There is where my x is 0, so my y has to be 5, which is my y-intercept. So my equation is y equals 2/3 x plus 5. So now you're going to need this in order to do your assignment for today. Some of you started your assignment yesterday or Friday. I would strongly suggest you go back to it and you take a look at it and fix it.